I want y'all to do me a favor. I want you to look around to each other and say, you have a role to some people at your table. We all got a role. It isn't coming from me. You got a role too, but yeah, it's coming from him, right? This isn't coming from me. But 3 years ago, I would never believe I'd be standing here in front of a room full of people at a Kolbe prison ministry conference. The prison thing I probably would have understood, because I came from that's where I was from. I was in prison for 5 years, and while I was incarcerated, some things happened, and I wanted to tell you a little bit about that and how Kolbe changed my life. So one of the very first things that happened, I was a father of Mitch Paco, and some other people were speaking earlier about the Satanist thing, and different things like that. It's funny how that happened because I was a pagan. I was the leader of a pagan community in prison, and I thought that was it. I thought it was everything for me. And as I went through that, I started to realize some things. I was just, everything was kind of going my way. Nothing was in resistance. I was still using drugs in prison. We drank alcohol, made alcohol, things like that. Well, one day I kind of got the idea that I wanted to do something better for myself. I think I can do something better. So I signed up for college. And when I signed up for college, I went to the mailbox. You had to fill it out. So when I dropped it in the mailbox, it was like it was a lead weight. And when it hit the bottom, it was like, ooh, like something I had never felt before. I felt uneasy. I didn't know what it was. And I never experienced, so I went home and went to call my mom, right? I was looking for some consolation, something like that. So I get on the phone, and I'm like, hey mom, how's it going? She's like, oh, good, how are you? I was like, oh, I signed up for college today. She was like, why would you do that? And aren't you good where you are? Don't you like the unit you're at? And I was like, yeah, well, I didn't think about that, She said, well, where are you going? I said, I have no idea. I put in to go to Houston, back towards home, things like that. And that Friday, they came to my bunk and knocked on my bunk and said, Tad, you're on chain. You're catching chain tonight. And I was like, what? I didn't know where I was going. I had no idea what was happening. So I packed up all my things, got on the bus, and left. As we left, we went from Briscoe unit to Torres unit. When we got to Torres, they were picking people up there. They were telling all the horror stories of how bad it was. And I'm like, oh, thank goodness I'm not going there. So we leave and we go down to Beeville, stay the weekend there. On Monday morning, they woke us up and we went down there and they said, all right, Mr. Wright, we're going to Torres unit. And I was like, oh my gosh, after I listened to all the horror stories all weekend. Well, it's just another prison, just another place to fall into place. I know what to do, I know how to act. I use drugs, so it's not a big deal, right? I get there, everything's going good. And one of the guys, they're putting everyone in places. Everybody's going to J5, which is like, the little bunks, not a cell. And I'm thinking, oh yeah, I'm going to J5 for sure. Like that's like minimum, it's not anything maximum. So they're going to put me back there. Well, I don't. I go to J2, which is, right outside of being in a G4. So in that period, I ended up meeting some guys that were part of a faith-based community there. And they switched us from this side of the unit to the faith-based program. Because there was some mix-ups, they found some cell phones there, and they were restarting it all. So they moved us into there. I got to move in, and I kind of looked around and seen how everything was going. I was like, wow, this is a faith-based program? Okay, this is pretty cool, right? They weren't doing any programming in there at the time, so people were in there using drugs, things like that. During that time period, the Kolbe prison retreat was coming up in October. It was the first retreat after COVID. And when everyone was telling me to sign up for it because they have good food. And I was, yeah. And so that's why I was like, I bet, I'm signing up today. So I signed up, and through signing up, I didn't get picked. I didn't get chosen. And I said, well, that's because the gods didn't want me to, attend this retreat, right? Well, the day of the retreat, I was supposed to go down to the mailroom to pick up a book that was like practicing spells and all kinds of stuff like that I had ordered to get sent to me, right? And so it's devil worship, right? Well, I'm going to go pick this book up, and somebody says, hey man, they're calling you to the chapel right now. And I said, for what? And they said, well, you got picked to go to the retreat. I said, nah, it's not for me. He said, well, go check because they're calling your bunk. So I go down there, and they said, yeah, Tad, come on in. I thought, I'm not going to go over there and check out that book. I'm just going to, go see what this is about. And I walked in, and I got greeted by everybody. Mark, all these guys that were on the Kolbe team there, Torres, greeted me, smiling, happy, and I'm thinking, wow, this is amazing. And we go inside, I go through the retreat, and I'm still kind of skeptical. I'm like, I'm here for the food. And as we're at the table and we're doing a prayer, specifically the Chaplet of Divine Mercy, and they were, when we said the prayer, we were praying through it, and I literally heard some God say, why would you want to keep sinning against me when you know that I love you and I died for you? And in that moment, I was in tears. I was crying. I had never experienced anything like that in my life. I didn't know God loved me, for sure. I wasn't raised that way. And as we turned back around to the table to do the table talk, and when we did, we were talking about sin, specifically unforgivable sin, right? And I was like, well, what does that mean? And he said, well, that means if you ever done any of these things, you're going to hell. And I said, well, I've done that. Like, I did that practicing, and he was like, well, that means you're going to hell. And I slammed my hands down and said, what the heck am I doing here? You know what I mean? And Mr. Bill Colleran, I think he's still here. Yep, he's right back there. Bill, raise your hand. Yep, Mr. Bill, I love you so much. He said, oh, BS. He said, if anybody's going to tell him he's going to hell, it's going to be that priest right in there. And I had never spoken to a priest before. I wasn't Catholic at the time. And got up, went inside, and as I went in there, poor Father John, I love him so much. And when I walked in, he was just sitting there quiet in meditation and prayer. And I walked in and I just told him, I want to tell God I'm sorry. You know what I mean, for all these things. And I was going through there. And he said, you didn't need to come in here for that. He said, and I'm confused, and I was like, what? And he said, do you normally cry like this? I said, well, no, sir. And he said, well, that's because you were already forgiven. You know what I mean? He said, you're out of a contrite heart. You didn't even need to come in here. He said, you need to go forward for me. And so that's just what I did, right? And so from that moment, coming out of there, I leaned into my faith. I leaned into everything that I could get my hands on. Fulton Sheen Apologetics, the guys coming in from Kolbe brought in Bible Timeline, things like that, the volunteers, and being there and attending Mass regularly in anticipation of receiving my sacraments, and that didn't happen for a whole another year from there to be able to do that. From that moment, waiting to go through our sacraments and everything in there, it was just anticipation. It was like getting married, and it was just something beautiful that I had never experienced before in my life. And it truly transformed everything about what I do. So before I was very selfish. I was a quality engineer by trade, and I didn't care about anybody. I cared about myself, and that's it. But I find myself now doing things that I have no business doing. Going and giving to people, even though I don't have, donating most of my time for ministry. As it said here, we developed our own faith-based program there on Torres, and we have 4 wings there now. It started out with just a group of us, and now there are about 400 men that are part of the program there. And it's all grassroots done there, and it's called the Freeman Project. But it starts with a problem, right? These guys, every single one of us can relate to people. These prisoners aren't what you've seen on TV. They're human beings. They're brothers, sisters, aunts, uncles, dads, sons. And it's so important that we restore that purpose in their life. Not just stripping it away, because most of society wants to strip away any kind of purpose for someone that's been in prison. It's very hard to find a job. But I told you, you have a role, right? And it's something that we need to think about. What can I do? How can I help? Because we might not be able to do and give and go to every retreat, but I can guarantee you that every single person in this room could give 1 hour a month, just to find out, do a little research on some resources. Something we're working with the Archdiocese right now is a reentry program, because there isn't really any. There's a lot of them on paper, but the focus is great, and coming home needs to be coming home to a community, because that's what the Catholic faith is. The Catholic faith is a family. It's not just a community. And that's what we need. It's always been that way. It's generational. You know, you go to Mass, you see the grandparents, and you see the little babies at Mass. You know, it's something that I've always loved, and I always thought about, even when wasn't part of the church, I thought about it and wanted to be a part of it. Unfortunately, the quicker thing that was there for me was gangs and drugs and violence, right? Lust, things like those, right? But, you know, the happiness, the peace, and the joy that God has for us is real. And it's here, but we need to make sure that we're doing our part because we have a purpose and we have that goal and we need to reach it, right? So I encourage each and every one of you to reach out to your friends, reach out to your families, to encourage them to donate some time or sign up for some of these events because they truly change lives. This isn't just something on paper that looks good. This is true transformation. Kolbe Prison Ministries transformed my whole life. And I want to thank each and every one of you for being here today, supporting this ministry, and ask you to continue to support and get your friends and family in on it too. Thank you guys so much. God bless you.